All right, so this is the leaf caster. This big white machine is gonna be what I'm demonstrating on. And the reason it's called a leaf caster is because the physical sheet of a book is often called a leaf. This is a leaf of a book that I have cast or filled in with pulp, which is what this machine does. It casts pulp into the leaf. So I'm going to prepare some pulp for leaf casting. I have selected a high quality handmade paper that is pretty close in color and texture to my original book page. And it's just torn up into little bits. This is a household blender. It has water in it. I'm going to add this torn up paper. I have a little bit of a sense of how much paper I need to add, but I will adjust that later. And it's just as straightforward as turning the blender on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 50 milliliters of this, because right now I need to know how concentrated my pulp is, because later I'm going to do some calculations to make sure I put the right amount of pulp into the leaf caster. So I have 50 milliliters of my pulp, and I have this form, which is 50 centimeters square area, and it's on the sponge so that it can pull the water out. So I'm going to kind of do a little practice cast here. So actually it's like a little sheet of paper, and then I'm going to dry it, blot off some of the water, and then to fully dry it I would just use a hair dryer to get it dry the rest of the way. We made our pulp and we cast it into this little swatch using my form, that plastic form, and I know the area of this. It's 50 centimeters square. I'm going to fold it up just to make the accuracy of my thickness measurement more accurate. I'm using this thickness gauge to measure it. So I have 32 hundredths of an inch, which I would divide by 8, and it's going to give me a good average thickness for this. And I'm also going to measure my original, which is about 8 thousandths of an inch. So those two values are important because all the pulp I put in the machine is going to get deposited in the margin that I'm going to leave open and all these losses. So if I put too much pulp in, my fill is going to be way too thick. If I don't put enough pulp in, it's going to be way too thin and spotty. So the leaf caster is set up according to the size of the leaf that I'm going to cast. I've masked out the edges. This is the area that will be cast. And underneath this is a series of different types of screens that's going to support it as the water is pulled through. And this is non-woven polyester web that I will put on top, and this is going to support the leaf when it's wet and when it's being cast, and also support the freshly applied cast pulp fills. So I'm going to start filling this part of the machine that's called the casting tank. And the way the machine works is it's going to fill it from below, and once it gets up to the surface, I'm going to stop filling it and put my leaf in place. So here we go, filling it from below. Water is coming out of this tank over here and being pumped up from below into this part of the machine. And here comes the water. I'm going to stop it. Everything wants to float, because everything I'm using is not very dense. I want to get the bubbles out. Okay, I'm going to put and then I'm going to change this valve here so that instead of filling from below, it's going to start filling using this bar. Here's the leaf that I measured. So I'll add this piece first. It wets up really easily. I'm already familiar with this book paper. Make sure these little edges are not folded under. And then there's a tear here. I'll make sure that's pretty well aligned. That looks pretty good to me now. I'm going to put the hold down screen on. It's an aluminum frame. And normally we don't put metal in contact, but for this we have to. But it's very smooth. Slowly so that the leaf doesn't swish out of the way. And worst case scenario, if I cast this and it's not well aligned, it's very easy to remove the fills and start over. Okay, now maybe you can see that the water is just about at the level of this grid, this hold down grid that I put on. So I'm going to add some more water. Okay. Now the water is well above that level. And I see my leaf is still pretty well aligned. Nothing shifted. That little area I unfolded looks okay. Same over here. Now I'm going to add the pulp. So this was the pulp that I did the calculations for. So it should be the right amount to fill this area, as well as the right thickness, because I want the thickness of the fill to be as similar as possible to the thickness of the original paper. Okay, so here's the first beaker full of pulp. The water looks a little bit more cloudy. You can see where the pulp is, but by no means is it like the vat of pulp you would have if you were making paper, handmade paper from the start. Because we're not trying to form a big sheet. We're just trying to fill the areas of loss. And now we are going to move this valve, turn on a different motor, which is going to suck the water back out, and it's going to draw the pulp into all the voids in this area right here. And here is the sheet cast with pulp. The black table below sort of helps you to see how the cast is formed. And then this extra margins will get removed. But right now it's, the more water comes out and the more it dries, the more it becomes a durable final sheet of paper. So this large book is a missal. It's a printed missal by the early composer of polyphonic music, Orlando Lasso, who, born in present-day Belgium, studied and worked in Italy, This is a printed book. It's very important, and it's one of the gems of our music collection. And it's in pretty rough shape. It's been rebound probably in the early 20th century. That rebind is falling apart. And very important to address is the extensive damage to almost all of the leaves. When this was rebound, some crude repairs were executed on the first few pages. So that's what you see here. But once you get past the first 6 leaves or so, you get this really bad damage along the bottom and foredge and corner. And it's page after page after page after page. So this is going to be our first major treatment that we use the leaf caster for. And it's going to be a really great tool because these losses are so complicated. The paper is so fragile and weakened along these areas, and there's so much of it. So we will have to set up sort of a process to move through this book efficiently. But I feel really certain that the quality of the casts that are going to fill the losses is going to be really great, and it's going to make this book whole again.